that was super sweet. Okay, I love that icebreaker. And okay, who was the one that won the icebreaker? What was your name?
Jill.
Jill. Okay, so Jill, so I've got a little something for you at the end, okay? A little take it to heart. So, hi ladies, how's everyone doing tonight? Good. I really thank you for letting me come and join and speak with you guys tonight about something is not always easy for us to talk about. I am very, very excited to be here and very excited to talk to you guys about heart disease. I know that doesn't sound exciting, but it really is at the end of the day, because it can save lives, right, with the information that we have. But before I start, I do want to applaud each and every one of you. I mean, I know you kind of have to be here because it's one of your monthly meetings, but I just want to applaud you guys for coming and being open to hear about with early detection for heart disease. So give yourself a hand, pat yourself on the back, high five your neighbor. Okay, so I'm going to try to get through this in about 15 minutes so that we have time for questions and answers. Okay, so that we can have more of a discussion rather than me just standing up here talking. But I'm going to start off with just sharing a couple stories with you guys first. So the first story I'm going to share with you guys is my neighbor Sal. So this is my neighbor Sal. He was 57 years old. He lived a block from me. Our families hung out in the same neighborhood. And on October 2nd of 2011, he was on the soccer field with his son. They were setting up for a game, and he died of a massive heart attack on the soccer field. And 30 days prior, he had a stress test and was given a clean bill of health. And I share this story because when my husband Dean and I went to their house when we heard the news, and we were devastated and we were shocked because he looked like he was fine and he was fit and he was healthy and all the things that we think that we're doing right in our lives. And we never, ever, 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 ever imagined that it would happen to us, ever. But guess what? Almost 3 years to the day. So this is my husband Dean and my daughter Jordan at the Muddy Buddy race. On a beautiful Saturday morning on September 28th, 2013. And this was actually taken 8 hours before he also had plaque that ruptured in his arteries and died of a heart attack. So this was him on noon on September 28th. And if you go to the next slide, Jill, this was him at 1 o'clock in the morning on September 29th. Completely blindsided, completely undetected. I mean, you can see he didn't look like somebody who fit the profile of heart disease. And, you know, the morning when we came home from the hospital, I was sitting in our backyard, completely stunned, of course, and quite numb. But having this really overwhelming sense that this was a big wake-up call. And have any of you guys ever had that before, like where something happens in your life and you're like, I'm not really sure exactly why this is happening, but I'm supposed to do something with this? Has anybody ever had that happen? Okay. Oh, come on, some of you guys have had that happen. Don't look so down right now. It gets better throughout the day. So I was sitting there and I just really felt like, okay, there's something about heart. There's something we're not doing. How could this happen? He was 46 years old. He had normal blood pressure, normal cholesterol. He had no family history. He never smoked. He was super active. Matter of fact, he was playing ice hockey that night when he collapsed on the ice. And yet he had a heart attack. And it just went against everything that I had known up to that point about who's at risk for a heart attack, right? How many of you guys know somebody, or you know somebody who knows somebody who's had a heart attack or a stroke? Okay. Wait, don't put your, Sandy says don't put your hands down yet. Okay, everybody keep your hand up, and then I want you guys to look around the room. Everybody get your hands up, come on, there's a lot more, right? I mean, almost everybody in this room right here knows somebody, or they know somebody who knows somebody who's had a heart attack. And I gotta tell you, ladies, that's a problem. Okay, that is not part of getting old. It is not part of growing up. That is a problem, and that was what I sensed that morning after Dean died. I sat there and said, there's a problem. So 2 days after he died, I called his doctor because he had just been there for his annual exam and had a clean bill of health. And I asked his doctor, I said, okay, so did you miss something? Because this isn't registering for me. And he said to me, you know, Victoria, it's not like getting a he said, you know, Victoria, it's not something that we test for. It's not like getting a mammogram or a colonoscopy. That is what he said to me. And I was like, well, I want to actually tell you guys exactly what I said to him. I'll keep it a little clean. But I was a little dumbfounded by that, because we all know lives are saved with breast cancer early detection. We all know lives are saved with early detection for colonoscopies. Why would we not do it for heart disease? So I just decided to dive into everything I could about heart disease and early detection and what does it mean and what does it look like. And I spent months. And every time I reached out to a cardiologist, they would say, Victoria, I'm so sorry for your loss, and it's preventable. Victoria, I'm so sorry for your loss, and it's preventable. Victoria, I'm so, and I just kept hearing it over and over going, okay, am I missing something here? Because this is not rocket science. So I'm here tonight to share with you guys what I've learned, what you can do to educate yourself about early detection, and hopefully down the road, save your life or a life of somebody that you love. So because of Dean, I did create a nonprofit called No More Broken Hearts. And it really stands for, because I really stand for no more. I mean, right now, heart attacks is the #1 killer in our nation. And it's not just the people that suffer the cardiac event. It is the people that are left behind. And that is, every heart matters. Every single heart in this matters. Okay, Jill, next one. Okay, so one more story. So this is my friend Steve. So Steve died the year after Dean did. Okay, so Dean was September 29th. I know, don't I have a lovely world? Don't you guys want to be my friend? Careful what you ask for. So this is Steve. So this was 2 weeks before Steve died. He had done an Olympic triathlon. He had high blood pressure, though, since his 20s. He went to his doctor after this run, about a week after the run, and was not feeling great. His doctor said, you're probably fine, but why don't we go ahead and schedule you for a stress test. I don't want to up your medication. Let's just get it checked out. He collapsed 2 days before that stress test. 3 completely clogged arteries. He was 48 years old. Doesn't he look like somebody who matches the profile of what we are led to believe is at risk for heart disease? Okay? Okay, so what is the biggest problem? This is what I have found in the past year out speaking with people and doing events, is first of all, a complete lack of awareness of who is really at risk. It is very, very different than what it was 40 years ago, and it's really important for you guys to know some of the facts that we'll get to in just a minute. There's also a perception versus a reality. A perception that is about 40 years old, and a reality that is not paid attention to today. And my favorite one, it can't happen to me. I know, because I lived that one. Never in a million years would I think I'd be standing up here talking to women about heart disease and early detection, because I lost the love of my life. Never. So I know that, and I gotta tell you ladies, it can happen to any of us. I mean, I just shared with you 3 stories, and that's just my little circle of friends. And we did just have another dad in our community last week who was on a business trip. And of course, the biggest problem, our doctors don't recommend it, and they don't talk about it, and the insurance companies don't cover it, even though it is approved by the American Heart Association. Okay, so we'll go on, because I know I'm probably right. Okay, so here are some facts. So about 610,000 people, men and women, die every year from heart disease. Okay, I know that I am just a burst of sunshine right now. It is the leading cause of death in all men and women. About 370,000 of the 610,000 deaths is specifically coronary artery disease. Okay, that is disease in your arteries. There are other types of heart disease, enlarged hearts, leaky valves, some other ones, but specifically what I'm talking about tonight is coronary artery disease. This is interesting too. So out of the 525,000 people that have a heart attack every year, 210,000 have an additional one. Okay, which we'll talk about in a little bit too when it comes to stents and some other things. So that's pretty astonishing, but here's what I find to be the most astonishing and why I'm here tonight. Because, well, let's pass through that one. And I was shocked. 1 out of 31 women die of breast cancer, and 1 out of 3 die of heart disease. Okay, so raise your hand if you knew that stat or that your doctor talks to you about heart disease. Awesome. Well, I'm glad to see that there's a couple. So that's awesome. That's astonishing to me. I think, more women, it's unbalanced from breast cancer because we have early detection. I mean, we all go for our mammograms every year, and we have for years. So that's really why I'm here tonight, is just to share with you guys, it's not a man's disease, it is a woman's disease, and I want you guys to be protected. Okay. All right, so let's talk about perception versus reality. So first of all, I'm gonna have to pull out some of my notes here, because I got really specific. I wrote a story in a magazine that's over there with a cardiologist who, we did an article on perception versus reality. And one of the perceptions is that those that are at risk of heart attack are your older, inactive, overweight, smokes, and doesn't take care of themselves. And the reality is that nowadays stress and inflammation in our body is more of a risk factor than what it was 40 years ago. And if you look at the stats, it's your 45 to 55-year-old athletic. I mean, all of you that raise your hand, would you say that the person that you know who had a heart attack was the profile of that? Right? It was probably somebody younger, maybe they were surfing, maybe they were on a mountain bike ride, maybe they were on a run. I mean, those are the stories that I'm hearing every day. High cholesterol means high risk for heart disease. Right now, 77% of the people suffering a heart attack have normal cholesterol. So if you go to your doctor and they tell you your cholesterol is good, therefore you are not at risk of heart disease, ask a question. Our risk factors such as being overweight or high cholesterol, high blood pressure, smoking, those have been put there to identify if the risk is higher. It does not give us a guarantee that we don't get heart disease. Dean didn't have any of those risk factors, and yet he had disease in his arteries. Steve had risk factors, and yet they still didn't check his arteries. So cholesterol is not really a risk factor nowadays, although you want to keep your cholesterol low. This is my favorite one. My doctor monitors my health and I eat healthy, and so I am okay. Okay, well, the reality is that the food that we eat today and the air that we breathe is really toxic for our bodies, and that's what causes heart disease. And of course, it's not just a man's disease, it affects as many women as well, and there's no race specific. Okay, so we're gonna move on because I'm losing the audience here. But here's the great news, you guys, is over 80% is preventable. Okay, so every time when I talk to a cardiologist and they say, it's preventable, over 80% with early detection. I mean, that's crazy. That's 80% of 610,000 lives that, could be here. Now, I'm not naive to say that Dean wouldn't have still had a heart attack. I mean, we all have a return ticket. But we didn't have a choice of even knowing if we could manage it, if he needed a stent, if he needed bypass surgery, whatever the case was, we had no idea. It went completely undetected. Okay, you can keep going through this. All right, so here is the great news also is, you can keep going and keep going. Okay, so here is what I have found, is that there is a CT scan. It's a very simple test that identifies calcified plaque in your arteries at its very, very early stages. I am not selling you guys anything up here. I am super duper passionate about a CT scan because it costs about $300. It takes about 5 minutes, and it will identify if you have heart disease or if you don't. It is that simple. And heart disease is manageable, and it's measurable when it's detected early. And I can share with you, I get emails every week from somebody saying, hey, I had a heart scan, thank you so much. My doctor found this out. I have a friend whose stepdad had a stress test, and he was given a clear bill of health, and his wife was recommended to get a heart scan. And she said, well, I'm gonna go ahead and have my husband do it. He ended up with a score at 2,400 and ended up in triple bypass surgery, even though his stress test just told him that he was fine. So it does identify plaque, and I'll show you what it looks like. So that's the beautiful thing of calcified plaque in your arteries. Isn't that so pretty? So if you notice where the arrow is, okay, so that's what the CT scan does, is it identifies anything that's calcified in the arteries, and that's disease. It's just that simple. Okay, go ahead. All right, so go ahead again. Okay, so here is what you can do for yourself and for your families, okay? So just get yourself educated. Know what the facts are. There's tons of articles. I have a red folder over here that has many articles that I really have found very informative that you can take to your doctor. Because what I find is that doctors will say that there's not enough evidence, even though it's been around since the 80s, and yet there's thousands of studies that have done the validity of getting a heart scan for early detection for heart disease. So, you know, just get yourself educated. Go to our website, go to our Facebook page. We post all sorts of stuff. There's a new documentary movie out called The Widowmaker. It is a fantastic documentary about stents and the coronary calcium score scan and early detection for heart disease and lives that have been lost. Do we want to play the trailer? I don't know. How are we on time? Like 2 minutes? Okay. I got hooked up with the film last fall.
911, my husband's having a heart attack. Put the heel of your hand in the center of his chest, right between the nipples. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Is he conscious? No, he's not.
In America and around the world, coronary disease is the #1 killer.
I'm getting him out the mouth. He's turning black.
About a third of patients, the first event is sudden death.
And this is a completely preventable disease. The science is a slam dunk.
One day he said to me, "Would you like to see something really neat?"
We were amazed at the images.
Every time we tried to redo the experiments, we got the same answer. It's just remarkable.
We were working on something that turned out to be valuable.
Some of the best cardiologists advised against.
I'm not a fan of it. I don't like medical cults.
Breathe in.
Well, he's an idiot. It saved my life.
Hold your breath.
And if it saved mine, it can save others.
Quick, I don't think she's breathing. Oh, God almighty.
How many lives do you think would have been saved if we'd done it in 1990, what we're doing now? A lot.
Okay, we're just on a roll of feeling good tonight. It is a great documentary. It really is very eye-opening that, you know, one of the biggest problems is just our industry, right? It's fueled by money and politics, and it's costing people their lives. And I stand up here before you today because I really don't want anybody to have to experience what I've experienced because we didn't know. And that happened when my neighbor Sal died. I didn't know anything about this, and here I am 3 years later. So it's a great documentary. You could download it on Netflix. We do community screenings, so it's really eye-opening. Okay, another way you can be a heart warrior is get a scan, right? If you've got some risk factors, talk to your doctor, go to an imaging center, get a scan. If you don't have any risk factors, get a scan anyways. I've had 2, and I've had a body scan. I mean, the radiation is the same amount as a mammogram, and it's less than when you fly. So if you're willing to fly, get a scan, you know? Talk to your doctor, get yourself educated, you know, be sure that you've got some articles to back up. Most people I hear beg to get a prescription from their doctor for a calcium score scan. In this folder is another article that just recently a study was done that it was about 4,000 or 5,000 participants, and they found that after having a heart scan, 57% of them that were on statins were able to get off their statins. Okay, so if any of you are on a statin, get a heart scan, see if you have a score of 0, because if you have 0, you have no calcified plaque. And now you have a choice. You can manage it with statin or not. So just, again, get a heart scan. Okay. And then the last way is just, you know, help us out. You know, stand up with No More Broken Hearts, stand for, you know, that every heart matters. Go to our Facebook page, watch some of the videos, read some of the articles, share it with your friends. Rod, who passed away last week, is very good friends with somebody who sits on my board. And I'm like, did you talk to Rod in the last year? You know, I mean, so share the information with, you know, at least 5 people. Just 5 people. Hey, check this out. Because that's how change is going to happen. And And really, like I said, I don't want anybody to go through what I've been through. Don't assume that we're all fine, okay? And that's my kids. That's my daughter and my son. My daughter graduated in May, and you know, her dad should have been there. So, okay, thank you. Oh, and Jill over there. Okay, so this is a book that was written by a dear friend of mine that I met in May. It's called Take It to Heart. She lived in New York. She was a stylist in the fashion industry. She lived in the Hampton. She was a juicer and a yogi and all that kind of stuff. And super stressed out, had a lot of anxiety. She moved to LA. She kept going to the doctors and kept telling her that she had anxiety. She finally had a heart scan and ended up in bypass surgery. She wrote a fantastic book. It's filled with women's stories. I had ordered a copy for every single one of you, but I didn't come today. So on that folder is my card. If you send me an email with your address, I will mail you a book. But I will give it to our icebreaker winner over here today. And it's a great resource. It's got great resources in there. And then for those of you that have husbands that are really, stressed out, this is another great book by my friend Dr. Joel Kahn, Dead Execs Don't Earn Bonuses. Okay, so it's very clear that stress is a big component. So get that for your husband's stocking stuffer. And I have some of those too, so if anybody wants one, they can, I've got a couple with me too. Okay, that's about it. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or we can move on to something that's a little bit more enlightening. You guys are all looking like, whoa. Yeah.
Do you know locally here, isn't there, is it LifeScan? It is about $200 and it's a complete.
Well, they do a lot of blood work. They do a carotid artery scan, which is important. Okay, if you have any kind of plaque that ruptures in your carotid artery or any kind of blockage, it's going to cause a stroke. But if this is clear, it does not mean that your heart arteries are clear. Okay, so they do not do any kind of heart artery scans. When I look at, most of the things that we do, right, we do blood tests, we do treadmill tests. None of that identifies plaque. Think about a pipe in water, right? You got a big pipe in a lake, and you want to see if there's any corrosion in the pipe, and you're testing the water. Most of us would be looking inside the pipe to see if there's any kind of corrosion. It's the same thing. So LifeScan, they do some testing, and I do know that they do the carotid, but they do not do the heart. With No More Broken Hearts, we would love to have a mobile unit that we went around to the communities, so we're still looking to see if that's, because the equipment is so huge, and the way the calibration is, I don't know if that's viable. I've got some contacts at GE that I'm talking to. But there's some places around South San Francisco and San Francisco, and you can call an imaging center and ask them. I know if you have a doctor's prescription, you can go to El Camino Hospital and you'll pay $100 out of pocket. But you'll have to go beg your doctor, so. Yeah.
I was at my internist 2 weeks ago. I know Stanford will do it.
Okay.
Covered by insurance. I think it was $200 or $300.
Yeah, it's not good. So Dean's hospital bill was $212,000 for 5 hours in the hospital. And we wonder why our system's a little messed up. I don't know, call me crazy. Yeah.
So is that something you do once a year? Like everything?
No, you want to get a baseline. I mean, most important is to get a baseline. If you have a score of 0, the recommendation is you don't do it for another 5 years. The American Heart Association does recommend men at the age of 45, women at the age of 55 due to menopause. I personally did it at 47. How old was I? 47. And they really do it more if you have risk factors. Okay, but even with risk factors, overweight, smoke, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, family history being a huge one. Okay, so ladies, if you guys got any family history, you got to talk to your doctor about it. Okay, big. They still don't do it. So, if you've got it, that's what the American Heart Association says. If you find that you have a score of anything over a 0, then there's disease present. The recommendation is possibly at every 3 years, just to be sure that it's not increasing. But it is not something you have to do every year. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's the difference between that scan and an angiogram?
So it actually identifies the same thing, but an angiogram is invasive, and they usually use a dye. A lot of times from a CT, from the heart scan, they will then follow it up with an angiogram based upon what they see in the heart scan. In the movie The Widowmaker, they actually identify Mount Sinai in New York, who the researchers had brought to the board to do CT scans to eliminate how many angiograms that they were doing that they didn't need to be doing. But the angiograms make more money for the hospital. So they nixed that one. But they identify the same thing. They're looking directly into the arteries. Yeah. Yeah.
You called it a calcium score?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what the scan is called? Is there a name that we...
It's a coronary calcium score, or coronary artery calcium score, CAC. You can also call it a heart scan. I mean, most doctors will, yeah. Okay, yeah.
So how do you know you go to, I mean, if you're doing it on your own, so you can go to a place on your own and just pay?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How do you know you're going to a reputable place?
Well, so in the folder, and that's why I don't have like a whole list for the area, there's 3 places that I, only because I know that they're reputable. So Heart Scan, which is in South San Francisco and in Walnut Creek, is actually where they filmed part of the movie at, and that's where I had mine done. Athletic Hearts of San Francisco is another place in San Francisco, and there's an imaging center in San Jose. So I'm in that process right now to like identify, but just I don't get any kind of kickback, or it's just I want people to have places to go. But you can also just Google in your area for an imaging center, and then just ask them, look on Yelp. Of course, easiest would be to go to El Camino Hospital, but you need a doctor's order for it. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Do you got something more lively coming up now? Yeah.
Do these things have that happen?
No.
Okay.
No. It does not identify soft plaque. So soft plaque is like a pimple. What's that? Are there false positives? There are not false positives, but it does not identify soft plaque. Soft plaque is like a pimple on your artery, and it hasn't calcified. And sometimes that can pop, just like a pimple can. So, but most of the time the disease has already gotten calcified. So if there is any calcified plaque, it will show up in a heart scan. Yeah. But I look at it like this. I mean, we all go to the dentist, we get our eyes checked, we get our car checked, we do all the things. I mean, why are we not getting our heart checked? It just doesn't make sense to me. So, well, I thank you guys for letting me be here. I hope it didn't totally bring you down tonight. I think there's going to be something more exciting coming up. And feel free to take one of those folders, and I've got more of them. There's some great articles. Email me, call me if you've got questions. I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.